who's really responsible for all of this realignment, expansion, death of the Pac-12? Because a lot of people are putting the blame on TV. And I have a problem with that. I think blaming television for expansion lets George Kliavkoff and his incompetent cronies in the Pac-12 off the hook. And I'm just not here for that. None of this would be going on if Larry Scott and George Kliavkoff had any idea of what they were doing.
Facts.
None of this would be going on. But yet they don't. And if imbeciles like Michael Crow at Arizona State had any idea of what they were doing, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. But yet, here we are. And I feel like everybody in this game is looking for a ripcord or a way to avoid blame. That's the biggest problem here. The Pac-12 has been so wildly irresponsible. If you go back to this Comcast money, if you go back to the lack of value and appreciation that they showed for USC and UCLA, if you now go back to our story and our reporting that Oregon and Washington are going to the Big Ten, and the fact that that conversation has been going on for months, we reported it in May. And I believe in May we told you that started in October. And yet, what did the Pac-12 do about that? Absolutely nothing. This isn't ESPN's fault or Fox's fault or CBS or NBC or anybody else. It's incompetence, malfeasance, and mismanagement in the Pac-12, Jake. And I think we have to call that out, and it needs to be said loudly, coast to coast, as a warning shot over the bow to these arrogant billionaire old men that run professional sports in this country.
Yeah, and I think that, ESPN or any of these major television networks shouldn't be the ones that take the blame because people run their businesses poorly. Is it any like should we be saying something like, hey, ESPN's at fault for the Pac-12 dying because ESPN won't make a bad business deal, which would be giving the Pac-12 $400 million for all their games? Well, no. ESPN shouldn't be to blame for refusing to do bad business, right? Because why would we want someone to do bad business? The problem is bad management for, 3 decades, 2 decades now? I mean, that's kind of what we're working on right now in the Pac-12, and I think it can only go on for so long. Now, if you want to talk about, hey, how is the transfer portal and NIL and recent developments in college football change things? Okay, we can have that conversation, but for me, I just think ultimately, when it comes down to it, you have to have a combination of a couple of things to survive in the college football landscape, and it hasn't really changed in a long time, even with the advent of the transfer portal and NIL, which would be, hey, you need to be a strong academic university. That's sort of the foundation of the house. Then, on top of that foundation, you have to have, from top to bottom, a reasonably strong athletic department. You don't have to be winning national championships. You don't have to be the best in the land, but you do need to be running a profit. You do need to be winning in some sports. It'd be ideal if that was football and basketball, but hey, if it's not, you can still be quality that way when we talk about realignment. Thirdly, and really it's the ace in the hole, if you are universally respected as a school that is capable of winning national championships, you can do basically whatever you'd like to do. You can move where you want to go.
Yeah.
You will not have issues. And that's what I think we're seeing playing out. We're going to talk a lot about on the show today about, Stanford and Cal and the whole Big Ten situation. We're going to get to that. And when I think about schools, whether it's those two, the schools in the ACC, even the Big 12, when I look at schools that are brands, but not necessarily athletic brands, not necessarily brands that win anything, that's not good enough anymore. And I think we're starting to see that in college football now.
Well, I think I would immediately I think the biggest story today is this Big Ten story, because I think it has a massive impact on the Big 12. We broke the story to you back in May that the Big Ten was looking at Stanford, Cal, Oregon, and Washington, and that process has been ongoing for months. Today, we're starting to get a little more clarity. I was tweeting about it this morning. First thing in the morning, I woke up to some text messages from sources telling me that the Big Ten has had ongoing meetings, and they have decided that they will not go to 20 teams at this point in time. It is too arduous for them at this moment, but I think really what this boils down to is there are a couple of brands that could be available in college football that I think the Big Ten values far more than Stanford and Cal. I think that is potentially Florida State, number one, and Notre Dame, number two. And if they go to 20 now, the Big Ten's view is they're landlocked because I don't think anybody's going to 22, 24, 26. Like, there's just no way to manage that beast. So right now, I think the Big Ten has made a business decision not to go to 20 teams. They will stick at 18, which means they are simply adding Oregon and Washington. And as we told you all those months ago, Fox Sports, CBS and NBC, and really it's CBS and NBC, have all agreed to pay to add Oregon and Washington, who are going to join the conference at a discount. Now, my sources tell me they believe that discount will be at 50%, so that Oregon and Washington will be getting $50 million. That is a $100 million net gain for the Big Ten potentially. That makes a lot of sense. Now, the other part of this story is very interesting. Pete Thamel at ESPN had a report about the frustrations this is causing for USC and UCLA because they wanted to be the Lone Rangers on the West Coast, which I totally understand. If you are the only two schools on the West Coast for the Big Ten, you're going to dominate recruiting. You're going to have access to every five-star quarterback, linebacker, wide receiver. The best of the best are likely going to stay on the West Coast to go to USC or UCLA. Well, now you have a recruiting behemoth in Eugene at Oregon that is going to join your conference. I can understand why USC and UCLA are perturbed, but Pete Thamel made a very good point. That was not written into a contract. It was something that was plainly stated in negotiations. Hey, we want to be the only teams on the West Coast representing the Big Ten. And it's all well and good, you said it, but if you didn't get it in a contract, it's not worth the breath that those words traveled on. Point blank. I get that. But at this hour, I feel confident in saying that Oregon and Washington, Stanford and Cal are no longer a group of four, and that Oregon and Washington will join USC and UCLA in the Big Ten. I believe that happens tomorrow. I think a lot of sources have told us this is going to end quickly. I am telling you now, do not be surprised if tomorrow there is an announcement that Oregon and Washington, who have long since, there is this other narrative out there that, oh, they're doing their homework on Oregon and Washington. They're not. That's done. There are no more questions. There are no more things to vet out. Oregon and Washington are in. The single biggest issue is what is going to happen at 6 p.m. Pacific time tonight when the Arizona Board of Regents meets. That, I think, is absolutely the number two story today, because you look at the impact that this story with the Big Ten is having on Big 12 expansion. If you are the Big 12, do you just turn a blind eye to Stanford and Cal? Because I would remind you that Stanford and Cal have nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. It's a really difficult spot for Stanford and Cal to be in. Tonight at 6, the Arizona Board of Regents will meet, and it is an executive session. It is expected to bring some finality to the process. I am told the decision's already been made that Arizona and Arizona State are going to act in kind, meaning they will move together. The questions are, what is the impact of that on the Big 12? Is the Big 12 willing to go to 16? We reported on Monday that they absolutely are willing to go to 16. That hey, we're going to go to 14 routine that they ran out was simply a matter of trying to process this more quickly, because there is no doubt that the crown jewel for the Big 12 right now is Arizona. And if it costs the Big 12, Arizona State and Utah, that's a price the Big 12 is willing to pay. Our sources have told us all along for about the last 5 days, it's Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah joining Colorado in the Big 12. That seems like the pertinent move, the finality of which should come tonight at the Arizona Board of Regents meeting, and it is merely a process. Bobby Robbins, the president in Arizona, is the one that's going to make this decision. He carries all the water in that town. I don't think there's any doubt that these three schools will join Colorado in the Big 12, Jake. Is that the right move? Should the Big 12 be looking at Stanford and Cal?
No, I mean, I just don't know. For me, the Big 12 doesn't need to indulge Stanford and Cal. And I think the struggle for me with Stanford and Cal is like, yeah, sure, you're two prestigious universities, right? Like academically, there's no questioning their prowess. There's no questioning their geography. Like there are positives. But I think ultimately, we're having a conversation about moving conferences and what your contribution to the squad would be essentially, right? Like if you're going to move conferences, why would a conference want to add Stanford and Cal? Well, of course, academics, right? I think we were looking before the show, and Stanford hasn't even made a tournament appearance in like 10 years. It's been some, long stretch of time since Stanford basketball has been anything to write home about. And I don't even have to talk about football. So for me, I just don't think that if I'm Brett Yormark and really Tony Petitti, either of them, I'm not sitting here saying, yeah, wow, dude, Stanford, Cal, these are two premier brands that I have to have. It's different than it is with Oregon and Washington. It's different than it is with Arizona, ASU, and Utah. At least with those five schools, and really we should be throwing USC and UCLA in there. With those schools, you can say, yep, I can count on these schools contributing on some level athletically that would result in more revenue coming into the conference, which thus justifies us adding them to the conference. Because that's really what we're talking about. I mean, again, when I look at like what Gloria Nevarez always talks about with college football playoff money coming in, the videos we've played of Kirk Schultz talking about how, hey, dude, we're going to get some college football playoff money, and that combined with this, really should allow us to get here. Like these conferences prioritize winning on some level. It isn't the whole story, but it is important. So if you do just absolutely no winning, if your brand is, hey, we're academics, we're not really athletics, even though Stanford has one of the best athletic programs in the country, it's just not good enough. And so, yeah, right now, Stanford and Cal are on an island. Stanford and Cal are in a position where you're looking at this and you're saying, okay, if the Big Ten's not interested and the Big 12 isn't interested, you're legitimately looking at the Mountain West, because ultimately, or really it could be a merger too. I mean, that's another concept that we've talked about on the show many times. Hey, after all these teams leave, is the Mountain West and what's left of the Pac-12 going to merge? Probably.
How do you not?
I don't know how you don't.
I mean, it's the only way. It's the only way.
Yeah.
And I think one of the more difficult conversations around all of this with the Pac-12, and victim is a strong word. Victim's a strong word. But you look at a school like Oregon State. Oregon State deserves better than what they're going to end up ultimately getting, which is scraps in the Mountain Pack, whatever that turns into. I think it is remarkable that we are looking at a scenario where Stanford and Cal, two of the richest, most prestigious universities in the Western United States, have nowhere to call home. And I can't imagine that you're going to have Stanford and Cal in the Mountain West. I can't imagine you're going to have Stanford and Cal. They're not going to the Ivy League. Like, it's crazy to me that you have Stanford and Cal, two programs, and I understand that Stanford in football and basketball really has been bad lately. But that program's got like championship level history in both of those sports recently. It's remarkable. Now, Cal has been a wreck for a long time, but you just hired Mark Madsen to coach your basketball team, and now you're not probably going to be a P5. That is remarkable to me. And again, I look at Oregon State. I'd have been on the phone too. People laughed at us on Monday when we said, hey, Oregon State has been aggressively pursuing the Big Ten and the Big 12.
Yeah.
they can't even get a sniff at this point.
Yeah.
Because now you're in a position where if you're the Big 12, I can't believe they would go past 16. There's just no way to do that.
Well, and again, I think this concept of looking forward is super important. Like if you're going to be, expanding and adding teams to your conference, you also have to look at, the next cycle. So when the SEC contract comes up, when this fresh Big Ten contract that they just got comes to an end, or when that negotiating period reopens, and obviously for the Big 12, again, you got to be in a position where you can add teams. And so if you're already at 20, landlock might be aggressive, but in my opinion, I think it's pretty close. Like you're not going to have, 25 team conferences or 26 team conferences just isn't economically for a conference. It's too much. And so if I'm the Big 12, not only do I have to consider the future, or not only do I have to consider the now, I got to consider the future. I've also got to consider the fact that in the next cycle, the Big 12 is going to be where the Pac-12 is, in the sense that the Big 12 is going to be the hunted by the SEC and the Big 10.
Yeah.
And so you got to be in a position to absorb the ACC schools if you're the Big 12. You got to be in a position to say, okay, let's assume that, a Utah or whatever brand you want to point to, a K-State, a TCU, whoever the hell you want to point to. Let's assume that those brands are viable options in a situation for the SEC or the Big Ten. All right, if we lose 4 schools to either one of those conferences, I know right now, because we didn't add in this current cycle, we'll be in a prime position to add out of the ACC. And that's what I think is really going on behind the scenes here, really measuring, okay, how much runway are we leaving ourselves to survive the next round? Because that's where this is all going. If you haven't noticed that, right? Welcome to the conversation. This is now becoming a volatile business. This is becoming a situation where, dude, if you're not making money above and beyond for your member institutions, you're not going to survive.
And I think that's exactly right. If you are not a value position, and I am of the belief, and we've talked about this as well, I am of the belief that when you look at why the Big Ten is not going to 20, I don't think it has anything to do with Stanford and Cal. And I think it has everything to do with who those 19 and 20th teams will be. Because it's not a matter of if the Big Ten's going to go to 19 and 20. They're going to 19 and 20. There's too much money there. They want Notre Dame, and they want one other powerhouse brand.
Right.
And why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? But you look at the situation in the ACC, I just don't see that getting resolved with the grant of rights being broken. I don't think you're getting 9 teams in that league who like Florida State enough to get that thing done. I don't see that happening. I think you look at the Big Ten's other options, I think it's yet to be determined. I think they're going to go to 18 right now with Oregon and Washington, and they're going to wait out this cycle of TV contracts. And when this cycle of TV contracts is over, I think you had better have made the Big Ten money. I think you had better competed for championships in both basketball and the college football playoff. And I think if you're in the SEC, I think if you're in the Big 12 when this contract that, by the way, keep in mind the Big 12 contract does not start until 2025. So I mean, we could sit here and we can talk about this and surmise who's going to leave the Big 12, but the Big 12's deal doesn't even start till 2025.
Yeah.
Right? So there's all of that. And I still think you are going to see the Big Ten is going to try and poach whoever the best brands in college football are. And whether that's an SEC team, you're probably never getting Georgia and Bama. But if somehow that ACC deal falls apart, you can't tell me they're not chasing Clemson and Florida State. And I'm here to tell you I'd chase Clemson long before I'd chase Florida State. You can't tell me if this Big 12 deal expires, I have a real hard time believing that the TCUs of the world and the K-States of the world and the, pick your flavor here.
Yeah.
The Utahs of the world, the whoever you're going to wind up adding, you can't tell me that they're not going to be attractive to the Big Ten, because they are. The bottom line is those who have the money have the power. And I think when all these new TV contracts expire, that's when you're going to see the Big Ten go to 18 or 20. From 18 to 20. I don't think there's a conference in this country that wants, 25, 30 teams in their conference. How do you schedule that? And furthermore, how do you coordinate that with TV where the bottom half of your conference even gets a game a year on television?
Well, and that's why I say, again, winning matters, right?
It does.
And really, we should stop saying winning matters. We should start saying relevance matters, because winning brings you relevance and relevance brings you TV opportunities. So for me, again, yeah, cool. Stanford has tradition. Cal has tradition. Nice, dude. But you haven't done anything that any millennial or Gen Zer knows about.
Yeah, and I think I look at this Big Ten story, and I start thinking about who are the losers in this round of expansion. And the one who comes to mind, San Diego State.
Oh, for sure.
San Diego State was desperate to get into a league that's going to be dead, in my opinion. They're going to wind up in that league by default because as I have told you, and we have heard repeatedly for several months, the only outcome for the Pac-12 is to merge with the Mountain West. That's the only outcome here. Because Brett McMurphy confirmed what we had told you about the Apple TV deal, but he also added a note that it expires on Friday, tomorrow. That deal's not done tomorrow. It's off the table. So not only is the Pac-12-10 deal dead on arrival, but it's officially dead tomorrow if they don't have 9 schools signing a grant of rights.
Yeah.
Which, after tonight in Arizona, may be an impossibility. I can't believe the depth that San Diego State has sunk to here. I think they're absolutely a loser. I don't think there's any doubt that Stanford's a loser here. How could you not be a loser? And potentially, maybe the biggest loser of all could be Utah. Because if Utah does not get in to the Big 12, which I think is going to be difficult, it's why this Arizona Board of Regents meeting tonight is absolutely critical. It's absolutely critical that Bobby Robbins and Michael Crow come out of that meeting aligned that they are acting as one. Because if Arizona comes out of that meeting and says we're going to the Big 12 alone, Utah's in real flipping trouble. I mean, real trouble. They will be stranded in this Pac-6 or whatever it would be, because I don't think there's any doubt. When Arizona goes, the Big Ten is going to pounce, because there's no more, hey, we don't want to be the bad guys over here.
No, I mean,
that's
again,
all over.
I think the Arizona decision is the trigger point for the Big Ten. Once that comes down, I think the Big Ten will immediately announce whatever they're going to do, and that's why I say, unfortunately for some of these schools, the business is getting more cutthroat. The business is getting much more into a position and into a marketplace where it's the sweetheart deals are over as far as schools and conferences are concerned, right? Because ultimately, the sweetheart deals between conferences and TV providers or TV partners are over, right? Again, it comes down to, why has Brett Yormark been so successful so far in 1 year in his tenure? Well, he's been successful because he understands just how important keeping your TV partners happy is. And if you can keep them happy, that provides you options as a conference. So he's done that, right? But as soon as TV partners no longer value your conference the way ESPN no longer valued the Pac-12, you understand the position that puts you in. It backs you into a corner. Because I got news for everybody. Everybody out here talking about how ESPN and Fox hate each other and they're not partners, and why would Fox want to help ESPN? I got news for you, bro. All these people talk all day long because what's good for one is good for the other, right? That's how the business works, because you don't have 50 TV networks. You've essentially got 2, 3, maybe 4, right? ESPN and Fox, in my opinion, are the top dogs in college football, and then you've got NBC and CBS. So 4 of them are all going to talk and figure out how it best suits everybody. So my point here is that if you're Stanford, if you're Cal, if you're Oregon State, Washington State, Like Washington State might be the best example. You've run your athletic program into the ground. It wasn't good enough to have a suit from your head coach. You had to go and be in a $70 million hole at just your school alone. Why would any other conference want to bring you in and bring you into their group? They wouldn't. So you have to win. You have to have a healthy athletic system. In the days of saying, hey, our academics maybe don't line up with your academics, in my opinion, are over because you don't have that choice anymore. You have to ensure your reliability and your survival long term.
But how valuable is Utah as a brand? Because every time we bring up Utah, inevitably we get the F Utah, nobody cares, they're arrogant, their education, like, can you take out your fandom? And let's have a real conversation about Utah. Because I do think Utah as valuable as Oregon and Washington? Certainly not. Those are bigger brands. But I think I can make the argument Utah is far more valuable than Stanford and Cal athletically.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any question about that. And if you look at the way that Utah does business, you look at their football success, you look at the success of every other one of their sports outside of men's basketball, I don't know how we don't make the argument that Utah is not a prized possession in realignment. And if you're the Big 12, how is Utah not a must-have? That's one of the great mysteries. And I've talked to a lot of people at the Big 12. I've talked to a lot of people around the Pac-12. A lot of people in television. And very rarely do I hear people outside of the Pac-12, mainly in the Big 12, say, oh, man, if we could just get Utah into the conference. Oh, man, the Utes in the Big 12 would be a home run. Very rarely do I hear that. I hear that from the Pac-12. I hear that from certain TV people because Utah turns people out to watch TV. There's no doubt about that. But I'm wondering, what is the knock on Utah? And I truly believe, and I almost can't bring myself to say it out loud, but I think the Utah shitheads on Twitter really damage the Utah athletic brand. I think Utah Twitter damages the University of Utah's public perception because Utah fans on Twitter are such a-holes. They are so deplorable. They're just people, you don't want to run into those people on Twitter because there's nothing you're going to say that is going to turn out well. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I've heard it 2 or 3 times. The fan base sucks. And I got to tell you, the Utah fan base does not suck. It doesn't. Does the Utah social media fan base suck? Yes, it is. And you can point fingers at any other school in the state of Utah, perhaps. I'd far more run into a BYU fan than a Utah fan. I'd far more run into the hateful Oregon Duck fan than a Utah fan on social media. I agree with that. But that's the only rationale that I have, and I've asked the question repeatedly. What is the issue with Utah? And the issue is people overwhelmingly believe the fan base sucks. And it's shocking to me. Because, and I don't know what you think. Obviously, you're 30 years old. Or 29, going to be 30. You're living the lifestyle. Do you believe the Utah fan base sucks?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're a bunch of red asses on Twitter, for sure. And I think that they want to sit on a high horse. They want to sit on a perch. They want to say, hey, we're better than you. Like they did all that. They did. And again, we need to say this because I feel like it comes up all the time. Oh, well, you guys are in Salt Lake, so you're BYU homers or whatever. Dude, I'm not from Utah. I'm not a Utah fan. I'm not a BYU fan. I'm not an Aggie Tears fan. I'm not a Weber State fan. Like, I'm not fans of anybody here, dude.
Aggie Tears.
Yeah. I'm not a fan, right? But it is my job to know the fan base and to know the program, to know the schedule, all this good stuff. So for me, my experience is, I would agree. I don't think you're saying this, but just so we're clear, I don't think Utah asshole on Twitter is affecting, Taylor Randall's conversation with Brett Yormark, but I do think that publicly The university takes a beating on Twitter because of the negative interactions of their
I think
fans.
it's not even on Twitter. I think the University of Utah's reputation has been damaged by their fan base.
But how far do
especially
you
on
think
social
that goes,
media.
though? How far do you think that goes, though?
Oh, I think it goes to, because I can tell you significant people in television have said that to me. When I've asked, like, one of the questions I asked was, well, why doesn't game day come to Salt Lake City more? Well, because their fans don't care. Utah fans they're just not plugged in. And I'm like, are you serious?
That's just not true. Yeah.
But perception's reality.
And that's true.
And the perception of Utah fan is that they damage the brand. And I today kind of pushed me over the edge of I'm hearing too much that the fan base is a bunch of assholes who aren't plugged in and who really don't care, which couldn't be further from the truth. They are very plugged in and they absolutely care. But guess what? They are a bunch of assholes. Mm-hmm. There's no question about it. And I never thought I would say it out loud. But the people who have told me that are decision makers in television, saying, their fan base, they're unplugged. They're not plugged in. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And I will agree, the fan base is what makes the game day experience tremendous.
100%.
It is all about that.
Yeah.
I struggle. Until the last 2 days, now I kind of understand it more, but I've struggled to understand why Utah's value in expansion has been so low. And now I don't think I struggle with that anymore. I think it's absolutely accurate that the fan base is not well respected and not well liked.
Well, and I think, the other struggle for Utah is they're just not good in basketball. You're just not. And I know they've had some good years over the last, decade or whatever, sure. But
they're terrible right now.
But they're awful. And again, I think it's safe to say that Arizona basketball has a better chance of winning a natty in the next 5 years than Utah basketball. And if I'm a commissioner looking at this, I'm going to say, okay, yeah, Bobby Robbins knows how to operate. He's not an issue here for me when I'm evaluating your school, so that's a check mark. And then when I look at your program, your football program's not great, but it is on the rise. Absolutely. It's gotten better. The NIL and the portal are going in the right direction. So you guys are doing well enough there, and you can project forward that, you could push into a low end expanded college football playoff spot in the next 5 years, maybe. Like that could be a conversation. So you're good there. And Arizona basketball is Arizona basketball. You know what that is. So that's why I say, Utah is not valued because Arizona is more valuable nationally. Utah is not valued because Bobby Robbins is good at business and knows how to attach ASU to Arizona. Like, that's the reality of the situation. So that's why I say, dude, ultimately, winning, in my opinion, trumps all this other garbage. Dude, if you win, if you're Alabama, it doesn't matter if Nick Saban was to be regarded as an asshole in a conversation. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because you're in natties every single year.
And you're Alabama.
You're bringing in college football playoff money every single year. And by the way, your basketball program just got much better. And that matters. So that's why I say, dude, winning matters. It doesn't mean that Stanford's some crap hole university or Cal is to be disparaged, but it just means that they're going to wind up in the compacted or combined PAC and Mountain West, and that's a tragedy.
Yeah. Very interesting. By the way, a bunch of people have asked me today if Utah's Board of Trustees is meeting. We were told they are not meeting tonight. So Arizona's got a meeting tonight at 6. I believe Washington's meeting is at 9.
Mm-hmm.
So tomorrow is going to be another history-making day and expansion. It is absolutely going to be lit. Tomorrow, 25 hours from right now, we are going to announce the winner of our first ticket giveaway. We're giving away tickets to big games all month long.
Mm-hmm.
4 big games. The first one we give away tomorrow, and it is BYU's first Big 12 home game at LaVell Edwards Stadium against the Natty. Cincinnati comes to town September 29th, 8:15, ESPN. We are going to put you in the stadium in Provo tomorrow at 4:30 Mountain Time, 3:30 Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
All you have to do to be entered to win is do what so many people have done. Go to Super Chicks in Ogden, Utah on Riverdale Road, or in St. George. Take a picture of your food, take a picture in front of the store. You're entered to win. Oh, you don't live near Ogden or St. George. Well, thankfully, the boys at Bucked Up have stepped up as well to support the show. All you have to do is send us a picture of you drinking a buckshot or drinking a Bucked Up energy drink or placing your order at buckedup.com, where if you use the promo code Monty20, you get 20% off your purchase at checkout. But you really ought to get a buckshot because it's a game changer. The lift that you get from these mentally is incredible. It's 200 milligrams of caffeine, but the mental lift, that's what I call it. You're more alert. You're more able to think clearly. You're more able to kick ass. At 1 o'clock when you're having that carb crash at lunch, do what I do. Pop a buckshot.
Do it. Absolutely do. And by the way, points for creativity, right? Like, yes, pictures, but points for creativity, dude. I need to see some creativity. That's what we're going for here.
Spelling BYU with French fries.
Making your score prediction.
Yes.
BYU versus Cincy
out of French fries
is
yesterday.
Incredible.
Was awesome. So we will announce those tickets tomorrow at 4:30. Now, my friends, if you are in the state of Texas, Monday, this is a can't miss show. Well, every day it is. Monday especially. We are going to announce our week 2 ticket giveaway. Monday, right here on this show. It is one of the biggest football games in the state of Texas this year. I am fired up for it. I cannot wait for it. I am looking forward to it.
Yep.
It is going to be awesome.
Bro, did you just throw up horns?
What do you mean?
Was that a low key tell?
Yes. That was a low key tell. We'll give away those tickets next Friday. We'll announce it on Monday. And it's going to be super easy to enter to win.
Yep.
Super easy. Let's get your comments in on the show.
Oh, my God.
First of all, hey, let's run down all the new members. And you guys, the super chats and the tips, you're amazing. Thank you so much. All of our new members so far. The Car Wash Channel is back. What's up, Car Wash Channel?
Go.
Christopher Murphy. Welcome to the membership. Mark Stone.
What's up, Stoney?
Welcome to the membership. And thank you for the $1.49 super sticker.
Appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Now, I will also say our first comment of the day is going to be a $20 super chat from Patriot Tex. Thank you for the $20 tip. I would think that Oregon State and Utah, Arizona and Arizona State would be the best bet for the Big 12. Stanford and Cal don't bring enough athletically to the conference. Oregon State and Wazoo deserve a Big 12 invite more. Well, there's a twofold way to look at this.
Right.
The reason Stanford and Cal were such a good fit for the Big 10 is the reason the Big 12 should want Stanford and Cal. You have a huge alumni base in the Bay Area. There are tech companies. There's money there. There's sponsorship deals there. There's huge viewership there. And, oh, by the way, Stanford and Cal would raise the level of academics in the Big 12 significantly, which, if we're being honest, is a struggle in the conference.
Right.
Academically, the Big 12 does not excel to the level of other conferences.
Right.
Stanford and Cal could fix that. But there is no question Stanford and Cal are a much better fit in the Big 10. I just think the Big 10's eyes are 5 to 7 years at this point down the road, and they want to have flexibility in that period of time. Should a Notre Dame decide to join a conference, I think the only conference that they would join is the Big 10.
Right. For obvious reasons.
Right. I think if Florida State, if North Carolina, if Duke, if any of those ACC members should spring free, I would think the Big Ten would want to be able to act. Because the other thing the Big Ten struggles in is basketball.
Mm-hmm.
The Big Ten in recent years has really come down to a 3, 4, 5 team league in basketball.
Sound familiar for the conference?
And if you're going to be at 18, you can't have 3, 4, or 5 teams that get in.
But I also think, for the Big 12, yes, they need help academically, but they don't need help academically more than they need to ensure their survival for the next decade. And I honestly think that's the conversation. How do I as a commissioner bring a package to my presidents and chancellors that sends the message that, hey, we're not just expanding, but we're expanding in a way where we're adding valuable brands that in a multitude of ways help ensure our survival. Because that's really what we're talking about. The Pac-12 is the first man off the ship, if you will, of us heading towards the 2-team, setup that everyone loves to talk about. And ultimately, I think if you're the Big 12, you got to look at that and you got to say, okay, we're a powerhouse in the business sector of running conferences. We know how to do business, but ultimately, the ability to do business is mostly contingent on your flexibility and how much money you have liquid. And so if the conference can add brands that year over year over year over year are in the playoff in football and in basketball, that's going to build money, dude.
Yes.
So yes, they need help academically, but unfortunately for Stanford and Cal, you're not helping the conference make money. That's the unfortunate part. Sure, is there academic money? Yes, but not to the level of athletic money in that same way. It flows differently, right? You're talking about grants and different things. Like it works in a different way on the academic side. So that's why I say, like, the Big Ten's looking down the line, and the Big 12 is sitting here saying, okay, we like Bobby Robbins, right? Brett Yormark likes Bobby Robbins. He likes the business philosophy. He likes the setup. He likes the aggressiveness. He likes the vision. They're in lockstep there. The only question is, as you said, after this meeting tonight with the Board of Regents, right, does Michael Crow and Bobby Robbins leave that meeting aligned and in a place where Michael Crow is going to say, okay, yep, we're second fiddle, we're following your direction. And if that happens, Utah's fine.
Yeah.
But if Michael Crow gets a crow up his ass,
gets a crow. If Michael
Crow did there, right? So if Michael Crow gets a crow up his ass and goes left instead of right, Utah is in big trouble. And if Utah stays, and then you've got Stanford, Cal, Wazoo, Oregon State, then I think you're in a really strong position.
Stop with the just the tip jokes. There's no need for that. Thank you for opening that door. By the way, if you are just hopping on the show, please give us a thumbs up. Hit the like button. It really helps us grow. If you are not subscribed to the show, please consider doing so. We are trying to get to 25,000 subscribers before football kicks off at the end of the month. We're at 21,568. Let's get to 22,000 today.
Dude, if you get us to 25,000, the day we cross, and typically a lot of times we'll cross like 25,000 the night before. Dude, if you get us to 25,000 before kickoff, we'll give something away that very day. We can do that now. You guys have supported the show.
Are you going to commit to what that is?
What do you guys want?
Nah, give me a PlayStation 5, bro.
I mean, what do you want? Is a PlayStation 5 not good enough anymore? You guys that spoiled?
I mean, if we get to 25,000 subs by the time football kicks off, which is not, I mean, tonight, when the Jets
yeah, the Aaron Rodgers.
Hit the like button, you guys. And, if we get to 25,000 by the time the college football season kicks off, we'll give away a PlayStation 5. Happy to do it. So make sure you hit the like button. Let's all lock that in. Mark Stone just paid $2 to say, hey, Jake, just the tip.
Yeah, thanks, Stoney. You're the best.
Hey, how about Mark Thorpe for $49.99?
Hey, Thorpe, how we doing?
Cheapskate, you couldn't give us the extra penny to make it 50? God. No, I'm kidding. Would you both say Arizona, the Big 12, is 100% at this point? I would.
Yeah.
I feel very confident in saying that.
Yeah, it's a much more. It's not if they're going, they're going. It's more logistics on Arizona State and by extension Utah.
Well, and I would encourage you to again, And I don't mean to keep going back to what Ray Anderson said yesterday, but listen to how Ray Anderson's tone changed when he was asked about realignment yesterday.
How do you feel? Where do you think it's going? How do you feel about it?
Well, I really, I know you have to ask, but we're not really commenting on that now because it's in a state where credibility is dependent on confidentiality. And so I can't respond to that other than to tell you I remain extremely hopeful and understand personally that no matter how it ends up, Arizona State will be in a good spot.
Bruh.
So wait, this is the same that said, we don't look at other conferences. I personally, as the athletic director, and now listen, that's somebody else's decision. I don't want to leave this conference. We don't even look at other I've never considered it.
Congratulations, but that's bullshit.
That was June 13th. He said, we've never looked at it and I've never considered it. Oh, and then yesterday he said, oh yeah, we'll be in a good spot wherever we wind up.
All right, bro. Have a nice day. Didn't mean nothing by it.
What? With this guy. And then...
What, are you taking notes from Jed Fish there, Slick?
And then, I was going to say, Mark Thorpe, you want a real answer to your question? Here's Jed Fish, the football coach at Arizona. What is he telling recruits about where Arizona is going?
Arizona's going to have a place to go. Mm-hmm. And that's what I tell our recruits.
Be all right.
That's what I tell our donors. That's what I tell our families of current personnel. Mm-hmm. We have a great brand. And we have a great basketball program, we have a great softball program, a great baseball program, and I believe we have the opportunity to have an incredible football program. Yeah. We're fine.
Yeah.
Where we play our road games, we'll wait and see for our president. But we are locked in and loaded for this season, and we're going to try to just be where our feet are, which is right now in the Pac-10.
In the PAC, let's see, Oregon State,
And,
Washington State.
Pardon me.
Stanford, Cal, the PAC, whatever the fuck it's going to be. It doesn't matter because we won't be there. All right, see you guys later. There's no chance. I think Arizona, 100%. Arizona State, to answer your question,
90%. 90%.
Utah, if Arizona and Arizona State go, Utah's in, 100%. This board meeting tonight, not to be redundant, but this board meeting tonight is critically important. It's critically important, and I'll run down all the news again in 10 minutes. We'll reset the whole thing. But this board meeting tonight, 6 o'clock Pacific time, it's going to be about 90 minutes. And it is, in my opinion, I think it is one of the absolute most critical meetings that you are going to see. And here's what's going to happen. They're going to open the meeting up, and about 15 seconds later, they're going to executive session. And they are going to, and by the way, again, because I know there's a lot of new people on the show. Oh, we told you so.
Yeah.
We told you. Last Friday, expect an Arizona Board of Regents meeting early this week. We got that Tuesday. What did I tell you on Tuesday? Our source on the board told us, hey, there's going to be another meeting this week.
Here I am.
They announced it yesterday, this meeting. They posted it publicly. This is the lock solid one. Here's the thing I think you have to understand about the Arizona Board of Regents. They don't have the authority to tell Arizona what to do.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. But the situation is, and this is why this meeting you're looking at on the screen right now is so important. Because when you look at the fact that this is an executive session, look at number 2 there, call to order, greeting, announcements from the board chair. 5 minutes later, executive session. That means in private, offline, behind closed doors.
Yep.
So the question here is, and our source on the Arizona Board of Regents told us they don't have to have a public meeting because they can't stop Arizona or Arizona State from doing anything. But these three groups, and the three groups are Arizona, Bobby Robbins, Arizona State, Michael Crow, and the Arizona Board of Regents. They make policy for the entire state of Arizona. So these three factions will sit behind closed doors tonight and decide how they're going to do this. And if if I didn't know and wasn't told that Arizona and Arizona State were going to be in the room, and really it's a Zoom call. But if they weren't
in the room,
if they weren't going to be in the room, I would tell you this is just some BS. But the other thing I would tell you here is, guys, look at the bottom here. B, pursuant to Arizona revised statutes is what ARS means. Legal advice and discussion regarding university athletics. It's over.
Yeah.
Bro, it's over.
Yeah.
It is over.
Pack everything up. We're out of here.
There's not a question anymore of what this is or is not. This is Arizona and Arizona State leaving the Pac-12.
Well, and I think timing-wise, you make a great point. When you said earlier in the show, Grum, that, hey, the Apple deal or the availability of the Apple deal to the Pac expires tomorrow at end of business. And so when you think about that, that's why the meeting's today, because the schools understand, okay, hey, if we're going to do this and we want to do this, we got to move. We have to do this. We can't continue to drag our feet. And so at this point, I think we've passed the stage of, oh, George Kliavkoff is an idiot. He sucks. He's terrible. He's like, right? Like, we're past that now, right? Like,
I mean, it is. No, you're right. It's amazing to me that they've just taken him out of the picture. George Kliavkoff is out of the picture.
And I think what's really fascinating to me is kind of what I was speaking on before. Like, when I look at some of these figures, like the Bobby Robbins, the Taylor Randalls,
yes,
you know, the Mark Harlans, the Dave Heekes, which, by the way, I must say, Dave Heeke has flown way under the radar in this conversation, which to me is quite surprising because he is someone that likes to talk.
Dave Heeke or J.D. Wicker?
Dave Heeke. 100% Dave Heeke, yeah. Yeah.
It's always the people who don't talk that are operating.
Yeah.
And you've heard from Dave Heeke a couple of times. You've heard from Bobby Robbins a couple of times. But after the Dennis Dodd interview, when have you seen Bobby Robbins run into the media to plant a seed? When have you ever seen Dave Heeke go to the media and say, hey, I need to plant this quote? You haven't seen that. You haven't seen that. You haven't heard from Michael Crow, but one or two times he did an interview with the Arizona State student newspaper.
Yeah.
He's not run into the media. Michael Crow's known this was the eventuality the entire time because those two guys, and much to our credit, because really, if we're being honest, pimps are going to pimp, right? Yes. It's a victory lap because nobody's going to cheer for us if we don't cheer for ourselves.
If we don't, no one's going to.
But as we've been telling you, these guys know the deal.
Well, and
they've known the deal.
Dude, I was thinking about the comments Ray Anderson, the comments you always reference from Ray Anderson at ASU, where Ray Anderson was talking about the fact that, hey, we're good. Our top end, our top of the mountain at ASU in athletics is top 15 in the country. That's top of the mountain.
He said on a tiny ass podcast that's done by a cameraman at a Phoenix news TV station. Nobody listens to it, which is why I think he thought he could get away with it. Ray Anderson went on that podcast and said, yeah, man, he said something to the effect of, at our best, we're a top 15 program. That's who we are.
And so
what?
The reason I bring that up, though, and I agree, it's outlandish, it's outrageous that you would say that as an athletic director, but the
How
reason
does any coach go out and recruit with that?
Bro, the reason I bring that up is because it's almost like at ASU, there's this air or this culture. How about that? This culture of, hey, we're not trying to be the best. What we're trying to do is we're trying to carve out the fact that, hey, we can make a conference money, right? Because we'll be in the tournament. ASU has been in the tournament pretty regularly, right? Now, they don't win a bunch of stuff, but they are making tournament appearances in basketball.
Yes.
They scratch the 25th, 24th of the top 25 like once or twice a season. And so they make just enough noise to be like, yeah, all right, Bobby, yeah, you can bring ASU. They're good enough, but we don't love them, but they're good enough. Like, that's what ASU is. And it is a shame because, like, ASU has a dominant hockey program right now. Like, ASU baseball has been a legendary program. But again, Let's get to the balls of the conversation. Nobody cares about hockey or baseball or softball or cricket or table tennis or anything other than football and basketball because it doesn't make you money.
Bottom line.
That's it.
And the biggest question at Arizona State is, if they stay in the Pac-12, can they afford marinara meatballs?
At Papa Murphy's, we do more than just pizza. We do meatballs and marinara.
Papa Murphy's does meatballs?
Oh, I think you mean I do the meatballs and marinara?
And how do you do it, Dad?
How do I do it? How do I do it?
Oh, well, we do it with savory ground beef
Covered in tangy marinara. That's how, honey.
At Papa Murphy's, we make great pizza.
And don't forget the meatballs.
Order now at papamurphys.com.